Hello everyone, my name is Susan Page. I'm Associate Dean, Indigenous Leadership and Engagement and Director of the Centre for the Advancement of Indigenous Knowledges, or CAIK, which we use for short, in the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. CAIK is an Indigenous-led research and education and engagement centre in the faculty. We do research and supervise graduate students in the broad field of education, as well as contributing to the faculty and universities' Indigenous strategic outcomes. We have a few things on our plate. I would like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation on whose ancestral lands the UTS City campus stands, and also on the lands in which I'm standing today, working today, is Gadigal land. I pay my respects to elders, both past and present, acknowledging them as the traditional custodians of knowledge for this land and all lands. Countless generations of Aboriginal people have been nurtured by country and continue to nurture and respect country all over. Today's webinar is brought to you as part of a webinar series, UTS Aluminated, great name, celebrating the achievements of successful alumni like Mayrah who have been recognised in the 2020 UTS Alumni Awards. Welcome to everyone who's joining us today. My respects to the sovereign nations on whose lands you're located also today. This year's recipient is a serious trailblazer in her field. So it's a pleasure to be here today to formally introduce her, introduce Mayrah Sonter as the 2020 Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences Alumni Award winner. Mayrah is a proud Wiradjuri woman, and she has not just one, but 2 degrees from UTS. Cheers. A Master's in Journalism and a Bachelor in Communications. She has forged a successful career as a communications specialist, events producer and journalist, driven first and foremost by her passion for empowering First Nations people. Mayrah is co-founder and co-director of 33 Creative, an Aboriginal media, communications and events company, co-founder of Indigenous Business Month, which is held annually each October, and host of The Real podcast. She is the current chair of the National Aboriginal and Islander Skills Development Association and a member of the New South Wales Aboriginal Housing Office Board, National Indigenous Culinary Institute and Commonwealth Bank Indigenous Advisory Council. She is a very busy woman. It's fair to say that she is a very worthy recipient of this year's award, and we're really delighted to have Mayrah join us. So welcome, Mayrah.
Thanks, Susan.
That's great. Okay. I'd really also like to welcome to the conversation Shannon Foster, who will be leading the Q&A for today's session. Shannon is a Sydney-based Dharawal saltwater knowledge keeper and artist who has been teaching her family's stories for over 20 years. She's also a CAIK graduate student, so that makes me a little extra proud, in the later stages of really marvellous doctoral work. And she does some great work as a research assistant at CAIK, so a valuable UTS person. Welcome, Shannon. And now it's over to the 2 of you.
Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you. And it's great to see you again, Mayrah. It's amazing. It's such an honour to be here and to be able to talk to you today. So I'd like to just start, though, with a few housekeeping issues. So just to begin, this webinar is being recorded. That's number 1. And the format today is for a 30-minute discussion with Mayrah, and then we'll be using the remaining time to answer questions and to get discussion from our audience. So we welcome any questions during the presentation today. So please, if you'd like to type them into the Q&A box in your Zoom control panel there. And thank you also to the many people who've also already submitted questions when registering. We'll endeavour to get to as many questions as we possibly can today. So let's get started. Mayrah, you're amazing. And you've added even more amazing things to your life this year. But basically really what we want to know is what gets you up in the morning, you know, who's your mob, what inspires you, what motivates you, what gets you going?
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. It's I'm honoured to be here, and I'd like to acknowledge the Darkinjung people on the New South Wales Central Coast, on whose land I'm zooming in from today. It's what gets me up in the morning. At the moment, it's my 4.5-month-old little girl who wakes me up a few times in the morning. And that's the new addition to my life this year, and my most important job, which we think we've put into the bio yet in the introduction, but new mum is the key thing for me at the moment. But really proud to have been able to work in lots of different organisations that really promote excellence amongst our mob, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I come from a really strong family, the Williams family. I'm a proud Wiradjuri woman. And, you know, I had a great role model in my mum who has passed this year, who was a real trailblazer herself and who worked in Aboriginal health. So I spent my childhood going around to communities and talking with Aboriginal medical services about services on the ground with community. So I feel like my work is just an extension of what my mum did, but more in the communications space. So I'm sure we'll chat a little bit more about the different parts of the my experience in my career to date, but basically getting up and doing great work with great people that empower our mob.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And the award is so well deserved. So congratulations. It's wonderful to see fierce, strong, you know, Aboriginal women out there leading the way and being a role model for our younger generations. It's absolutely brilliant. In fact, if you could change anything or leave behind a message or something for the future generations, what would it be?
I'm glad we do a little bit of prep before this meeting because it's such a big kind of...
It's a big question.
But I suppose the thing that makes me, that drew me to doing communications at the start was seeing Ernie Dingo on television for the first time back in the Getaway kind of days, and just to see a person with black skin like me on TV and go, oh, how cool is that? And the power of seeing yourself reflected, whether that's on television or in the media more broadly. And that's kind of really the pivotal moment as a little person where I went, I want to do something like that and follow this kind of path. So I think being able to break open media and to show people the excellence that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have forever had, but often we're closed off from those sorts of conversations, and not many people in our country would realise that they would know Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people, and so that's why the media is so important, to really get to know what our culture is all about, and it's not just what you read in the paper, that we are you know, a sovereign people, a proud people, the longest continuing living culture on the planet. And I don't think that we're properly celebrated and acknowledged for, you know, how deadly we are, really. So I just want to spend my life shouting that out for as many people as possible, so that the next generation grow up really proud in who they are, and strong in themselves and in their culture, and, you know, just to be the best of who they are.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. It's such a fantastic role model for that too. I know in the past I've been very inspired by seeing you out there and the ways in which you work. It's just brilliant and really inspiring. So it's great that you're out there and we have such great leaders. You've had such an amazing career. It's been so varied, and it's been across journalism and broadcasting and events and PR. But can you tell us a little bit about your career journey from the time that you graduated UTS until today here with us?
Yeah. Oh, just a little question again.
Just a little bit, yeah. Where do you start? Where do you finish? Talk away.
So I did a communications degree at UTS because my high school maths teacher told me I talk too much in class. Yes. And now look at me. This is what you do.
You've been back?
There's a job out there for everyone, no matter what your skills are. I suppose the first kick-off was one of the uni subjects where you had to, you know, do a bit of in-person time with an organisation. So at the time I worked with a woman called Emma Collison. She was a publicist, and I chose to go and do my work experience with her because she did work with Bangarra and Deadly Vibe, two amazing organisations. And I thought, oh, if she's doing kind of PR for them, I want to go and find out, you know, what that PR kind of job entails, but working with those sorts of organisations is what really drew me to her. And then from there, I worked in the education department and at the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Education Directorate under Johnny Lester and Christy Masella from the Aboriginal Aboriginal Employment Strategy. She's the current CEO there. So she was one of my first bosses and a dear friend, and was the first client at 33 Creative as well. So that's a big tick for Christy. And when I went and did work there, I did a little bit of events. So we did the first Nangamai Awards in the New South Wales public schools, so to celebrate excellence of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students. And that was my first chance at doing events. But I really like this because I'm quite an organised person. And then from there, Mr. Gavin Jones, rest his soul, got in touch and said, come and work for me. So I went and did the PR work with Emma Collison for a while and worked on the Deadly Awards, and they were the national celebration of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander excellence, and I was hooked at that moment. It's like, how good is this? And it was across all of the, you know, from writers and sports people to broadcasters and artists, and it was just like, these are the best of our mob in the country. And so I got to work a part of that amazing organisation, which unfortunately is no longer around, but really continued to instill that excellence through media. It had a Deadly Vibe magazine, a Deadly Sounds radio program that was hosted by Rhoda Roberts. To be a young woman in her 20s and to help produce a show for Rhoda Roberts was like, how good is that? Just phenomenal. And I worked my butt off to try and, you know, do the best briefs for her. But of course, she's lived it. So there was nothing I couldn't prepare for her that she didn't already know. But yeah, just another amazing Aboriginal woman on kind of the path. So I worked there for 8 years, and then unfortunately when that organisation came to an end, we wanted to continue to do the great work that that organisation was doing. So we started 33 Creative, so a media communications and events company. We just turned 6 last month, and that time is flying even there. And we've got, I think, about 8 team members now. We do work nationally. We do things like we got to host the National NAIDOC Ball in Canberra last year. We get to do campaigns, work with community organisations on communication strategies and products just across the board. And what I really love about it is no day is the same. It's always different, but it's usually always about excellence and communicating to our mob so that we can get whatever information needs to be in community. And then in amongst that, I got to do a bit of work like at NITV, doing some, used to host Around the Traps. That was back in Koori Radio days, back in Redfern with Brad Cook. And Kiss My Black Arts was part of that as well. So so a little dabbling in media on the side.
It's wonderful. Wow. And now you're juggling all of that with being a mother. It's crazy. It's really amazing. It's so inspiring.
Not always at the same time, though. Don't think that it's like I've cut back on a few things to be able to. I think you can have it all, just not all at the same time.
That's really, really good advice, I think. I think everyone needs to keep that in mind. That's brilliant. So I've noticed that a lot of your focus has been on creating diversity in media and expanding Indigenous voices and our representation across all mainstream media. Can you share some insights into how, you know, we can achieve that and how that can be better done perhaps here, especially in Australia?
Yeah, sure. I did some time overseas. I was a recipient of the Endeavour Award, and I did some research of First Nations communities internationally and here. And the biggest takeaway from that was I know that our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander media sector is amazing. It does great work right across the country, often on the sweat of an oily rag, one-man bands communicating to lots of regional areas. But that's not going to make the change to the broader society. We really need more Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in mainstream media. And those relationships with the Indigenous media sector are also really important. So that's what makes me really proud of fellow UTS alumni Brooke Boney, to be able to get up and watch her on the Today Show every day. How good is that? Like, I struggle to even talk about it because it just makes me so proud, and it's welling up a little bit. And it's just, fun and media, but she's there because she's deadly at what she does, but she gets to share culture on a daily basis, and you don't know what you don't know. So if you're having a newsroom conversation and there's no Aboriginal people in there, then how are you ever going to learn? So we need to get more of our mob into more newsrooms right around the country, I think would be a really great start. And continue to encourage people to engage with the Indigenous media sector nationally with, NITV and National Indigenous Radio Service and so many more. So really, you have to have those strong relationships to really understand and unpack some of the issues faced by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people.
Yeah. That's it's fantastic, and like you were inspired by Oni Dingo all those years ago, and you can imagine how many Aboriginal kids now are inspired by seeing Brooke and yourself out there, and such wonderful role models. So it's brilliant. Now you're also, I'm breathless at all of this, an innovator and entrepreneur, which is lovely too. Tell us about Indigenous Business Month and the work that you've been doing helping Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people develop their own business opportunities, because that's really super important.
So when we started 33 Creative, I did, around the same time, I went to Melbourne Business School and participated in the Mayrah Indigenous Business Masterclass. So it's kind of like an MBA for the mob, but shortened into 12 days effectively. 3 4-day weekends at the time it was, and it's run out of the Melbourne Business School by Dr. Michelle Evans, and that program was really to give you a taste test of what business was like, because at that point in my career I didn't know what I was going to do next after my time at Vibe came to an end. So did you want to go off and find another job in another organization, or and decided that probably starting up a business and working together to continue that legacy of Vibe was really important. And I knew that I didn't really have the business skills. So I'll go and do the masterclass program. And it was in that course where it's called Murra because in the local language it means fish trap. So the idea is you bring the mob in, fill them up with knowledge, and then send them back out. And so with that concept in mind, in the last class with our amazing group of 20 odd Murra Gen 4, high Gen 4 Murras, Michelle comes in and says, all right, you've got all this knowledge, what are you going to do with it? And then leaves the room and lets us all kind of talk about what that might look like. And, great ideas like let's set up a scholarship fund, sort of for young students, have a junior Murra kind of program. They all came about, but given the communications background, whatever we did as a group moving forward, it needed to be able to be communicated broadly and amplified. So we said, why don't we just have a month where we celebrate Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander businesses, and let's put it out on social media, and let's engage with the mainstream media about it. Let's host some events around the country and get more people having conversations. So that's what we did. So 3 months later in October, we dedicated the whole month to it. We just decided to call it Indigenous Business Month, and we had the first event and we launched it, and that was 6 years ago now, and we've just celebrated an amazing Indigenous Business Month this last October, getting great cover on ABC News Breakfast last week, so that was super cool. But we just really wanted to make sure that we were telling stories as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander business owners. So not people talking about us. The Indigenous procurement policy has been a successful government policy, and it just didn't want the rhetoric to be just about that. We wanted to show the breadth and the depth of the talent and all the different types of businesses, because I really believe in self-determination, and business is a big part of that. Being able to, earn your own money. In businesses, you can stay in your own communities with a lot of these ideas and taking advantage of technology. So it seemed like a perfect way to wrap it all up with Indigenous Business Month. And, we continue to celebrate it now. It's kind of, we don't have to push it as much anymore, which is probably, that makes you feel really proud that people are just running with it. So we hope to continue to do it, because there are just so many amazing, talented entrepreneurs and business owners out there. And Christmas time is very busy because you're trying to buy from all the other businesses, and the trading flanks of the world are kind of popping up and sharing that kind of promotion and importance of engagement with Aboriginal businesses as well. So that's how Indigenous Business Month came to life.
That's fantastic. And mob helping mob, and just bringing it back around in the whole circle. It's just what we're about. It's just brilliant. That's so good. Such a great idea. Okay. And another thing, education. Can you tell us a bit about your work in education, pathway building and mentorship?
Yeah, sure. I suppose that extends culturally. We're all very supported in the community. I was very lucky to have amazing role models from my mum, but then also people like Pauline Clegg, who really took me under her wing at the start of my kind of media career, and always, I just remember we used to go and have chocolate cakes in Glebe after doing community radio at Crew Radio together. And we used to talk about all these amazing ideas that we could have, and just, they're just such treasured kind of memories. So I'm lucky to have been the recipient of people who share their knowledge with me, and it's always important that we give that back. And so I continue to work with my old high school, PLC Sydney. When I was there, I was the only Aboriginal kid the entire 6 years, and that's quite full-on experience. And so we do want to have the school remain the same. So let's get some more of our kids in, and let's support them. So that's what we've continued to do over time. But if there's ever a chance for me to support anyone in whatever they're doing, I always try to do that, because it just really made a difference in my career. Or the people who, you know, I'd call up and say, hi, I'm Mayrah. I really admire what you do. I'd love to go for coffee sometime. And I don't think I've ever had a no, really. And they're really amazing.
Why would you?
So yeah, you've got to ask, don't you? And often you get a yes. So and those sorts of relationships have been developed out of that. So that's just a little bit about kind of mentoring more broadly.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, that's so important, I think, to give back again. It's really commendable. I love that. Now for our next question, I think Susan Page, our illustrious leader, might be the best one to contribute to this answer. Now, what do you both think? Have we got Susan around? If she's there, come back on in. Hi, Susan, you're back. Yay. It's lovely to see you again, always.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just recently it's been announced that there's going to be fee increases for arts and social sciences now at uni. And that's going to have a really, I think, big impact on Indigenous students' futures. I think this is a conversation that needs to be had, and we need to talk about this, especially from a really, you know, both the perspectives of both of you who understand this field quite extensively. So what do you both think? We can tackle each other for who goes first.
Yeah, of course, the guest.
What do you think, Mayrah? How do you think it's going to impact Indigenous students, this hike?
I saw the amazing article by Lachlan McDaniel, who's a good friend
our very own.
And I absolutely support him. And, you know, as a person who has graduated in the arts and who has had a lucky career where I've been able to do so many things, of course I'm in favour of more opportunities in the arts and for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in particular, because a lot of the jobs that we do are about serving the community. And so in a lot of the fields in that sector are exactly what our mob go into, and we don't want any more kind of roadblocks put in the way of our mob doing what they want to do. And, you know, unfortunately, fee hikes are going to get in the way of that, and it's quite disappointing. And from a personal perspective, when I stop and think of all of the gorgeous women, talented women who have gone before me just out of comms at UTS. So, you know, Brooke Boney that we've already mentioned, you know, Karen Mundine, CEO of Reconciliation Australia as well. There's just so many that are leading organisations around. You just think, well, if they didn't get a chance to do it, where would we be as a country? Because they're really out there, really changing the world. So, and the way our mob are perceived. So it's disappointing. If I had a magic wand, I would absolutely change it. But I'm sure Susan might have some more stats or technical information behind that. I just know from a personal experience actually going through, but also, you know, my role models who have come out from arts degrees are, you know, phenomenal, making great contributions to our society.
Yeah, thanks, Mayrah. You remind us of all it's easy enough to talk about stats and numbers, but actually it's the stories, as we know from the arts and humanities, it's the stories that are really critical. So your story, Brooke Boney's story, but all the stories of the other arts graduates who are just out working away for our people and doing maybe fairly small things, but are making a difference. That's the critical thing. So, I mean, we would not want to lose those things. There are some, you know, there's probably some positives in the Job Ready package, sort of for rural and regional and remote students, but in terms of the rising costs for the arts and humanities, I think we can't be absolutely sure that students will choose based on that, but if they do, well, if they choose not to do arts, those sorts of subjects, and that's going to be damaging. The other risk, I think, here, and this is maybe the more statistical thing, is that where students do choose to do the subjects that are now going to be more costly, they're going to have bigger debts, and you know, don't tell anybody, but probably the humanities is not where the big money is in terms of earning capacity. So you saddle students with larger debts. And I suspect that this was a policy lever that, you know, big picture, government had an idea of wanting students going into STEM, etc., but where Indigenous peoples and students weren't thought of. I mean, some structural issues that probably weren't also thought of. Our kids are actually not necessarily, and I thank you for mentioning your maths teacher, Mayrah. It's lucky that's all they said to you, that you talk too much. You know, kids are not necessarily encouraged in primary school. So there may be structural issues that just haven't been addressed here. So it's just, you know, raising the prices of subjects may not necessarily draw Indigenous kids into the sciences and technological subjects. Yeah, so I think it remains to be seen, but I do think it's disappointing, and I would hate to see the loss of our fantastic social sciences, arts, humanities kind of graduates.
Yeah. UTS has been fantastic. I know for myself, doing a PhD through the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences and through CAIK, I know that there's been so much support for us through the school, and they have some fantastic initiatives and brilliant centres for research, and do some amazing things to encourage and to make sure that we're all brought in and honoured and respected and encouraged to do well, and not, you know, we're set up to succeed, not to fail here, I feel. So I think that makes like a massive difference. I would just hate to see, especially for undergraduates and for the other young Aboriginal people, because we do have a high percent, a lot of Aboriginal students will go into Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, won't they?
Yeah, it's one of the fields. It is one of the broad fields where Indigenous students have traditionally gone. Again, not to mean that we shouldn't have students in other fields, but it is a broad field. At UTS, we have the most Indigenous students in our faculty, by a bit of a stretch, really. Well, and again, it's the critical work. Think of the beautiful work that you're doing around family history, knowledge keeping, tribal knowledges. That work is really important. Yeah.
It needs to be nurtured, and you know, it's been brilliant being here at UTS. I've had the most wonderful. I don't want it to end. I don't think it's going to end for a while yet.
Send them to UTS.
Yeah. So, that's it. So one day I'll be an alumni. And you never know, I might get to sit in Mayrah's seat. Who knows? I'm very inspired though by Mayrah and by everybody here, for like the amazing women that have come before us, Susan and Michelle Trudgett and all the brilliant women here at UTS. It's just amazing having Heidi Norman and just these brilliant women at your fingertips, let alone Larissa Berrant, and we've got Alison Whitaker here, and we've got so many amazing Aboriginal women. I know I haven't even mentioned a quarter of them. And
well, the men, that's right.
The men are brilliant too, but I do have a very special place in my heart for amazing women who
and we definitely
make
have
such a difference, to our communities and to our lives. It's absolutely brilliant. So, have we got questions that we should be answering here? I hope they're all. Oh, let's have a look. We've got a question here. In relation to Indigenous Business Month, Mayrah, have you been involved in protecting Indigenous intellectual property? This is a good question. And if so, in what ways? Is there any big lessons learned or tips for Indigenous artists and business people? What a great question.
Yeah, I haven't personally been involved with it as Indigenous Business Month, kind of organising all the things around the country. I've definitely been privy to the conversations that are being had, and it's absolutely a very important issue going on right now. I know Terry Janke leads a lot of the work in this space, so I would encourage people to go and check out her intellectual property, various pieces of work that kind of guide that. It's an evolving piece because we have so many knowledges, and it's all coming to the forefront, whether it's in food, native ingredients, how, Aboriginal artworks. I know that we have to make sure that we manage that well at 33 Creative as we work with artists all the time. So it's definitely something that has to be forefront. And I'm sorry I don't have more information on specifically around Indigenous Business Month, but there are definitely leaders in the field who are having those conversations.
Yeah, I've seen some amazing work come from the City of Sydney Council, through David Beaumont, who works tirelessly to make sure that everybody within his jurisdiction is looked after, and he's a brilliant Aboriginal man, and I have great respect for him. And they've done some brilliant work in identifying really some great phrases on how to protect Aboriginal cultural IP as opposed to the intellectual protocols or the intellectual properties within contracts and within, you know, projects and things, because a lot of contracts, they want to own everything that's discussed and created within that contract, but you can't own our stories, you can't own our languages, you can't own any of those things. So yeah, it's a complicated area, but there's some really great wording through the City of Sydney that can help people to phrase how they want to protect their Aboriginal cultural property. So it's brilliant stuff. It's a very expanding area, and Terry Janke is, oh my gosh, another fantastic, inspiring.
I wish we could claim her for UTS.
I know. Can't we get it to like come and...
Can someone come and get her over?
Yeah, and we'll just say, oh, now she's a UTS woman. Well, she knows us, so that's, you know, 1 degree of separation. So we've got another question. Here we go. Mayrah, who are good examples in the media of good Indigenous allies and why? Now you're going to tell some stories. Feel free to tell us about the bad ones too.
It makes me proud that I had to pull myself away from the election coverage to do this today, and to see Stan Grant co-hosting on ABC Breakfast, ABC's coverage today is just phenomenal. So, but there's been a push to make sure that there are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander media and voices. It wasn't always the case. It's even just this year it started to kind of push and have more of our mob involved in the media there. So that was just one thing I was very proud of to see today. And in terms of good allies, I think the ABC does a great job. I know that they have ongoing Aboriginal Anala Cooper comes to mind, does the kind of just the before 6:45 a.m. session a few mornings a week, just what are the highlights in the newspaper. So it's just not about having Aboriginal people there for Aboriginal people's sake. It's just generally talking about whatever is news of the day. So I think ABC do it really well. And that's probably because of all the amazing mob who have worked in that organisation. Yeah. And I'd like to acknowledge Philippa McDermott also, an alumni winner this year. And I believe her session is next week. So if anyone wants to go and check that out. So, really strong, proud people making changes within kind of organisations.
What did you think of Yumi Steins last year talking to Kerry-Ann Kennelly when Kerry-Ann Kennelly was bagging out all the protesters and Yumi pulled her up? And
racism, you've got to call it up. It's one of those things that can feel uncomfortable, and it's often tricky with racism because you just can't believe it's happening a lot of the time, and you're just like,
it's so bold.
You really have to go, no, that's racist. Yeah. So good on Yumi for shouting out, and anyone who raises the attention when there is racism going on, and that's institutional structural racism, those unspoken words, let's not hire an Aboriginal person in our newsroom. They're the important bits that really are going to make a change.
Yeah, thank God we've got those allies out there. They're brilliant. It's amazing. So another question for you from the crowd. Here we go. What are some of your most memorable moments in broadcasting and events? Wow.
I'm really proud of the National NAIDOC Ball last year. It was our first chance to do it. We had just won the contract to produce the National Ball. We turned it around really quickly, and it was in a big year in our nation's capital. So really proud to have done such a great event. So that would be one, and that was broadcast on NITV as well. So working with them, doing all the deadlies every year was also amazing. I really enjoyed doing Around the Traps with my co-host Alan Clark, because we were just young kids really who I don't know why Pauline trusted us to co-host an arts show on NITV, but she did, and we had a lot of fun doing it. But the best part of that was just seeing all of the art stories from right around the country. So we had reporters everywhere, all feeding in what was happening, really trying to get people to go out and experience our cultures in different ways. There's a blooper reel from that show that's hopefully never sees the light of day.
You're going to have to write a book. And it'll be fantastic. I'll be the first one in line to read it. It'll be brilliant. Especially we want all the background stuff, like we want all the really, all the nitty gritty in the back. That would be amazing. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that book. We've got another question. How good are these questions today? These are brilliant. Is there a piece of work in your journalism career or a moment that you are most proud of?
Nothing jumps out in particular. I think it's and it's probably my personality. I like to do lots of things, not just one. So I think kind of upon reflection, it's the variety of the different work that I've been able to do and involved in. Really proud of the work that I did, researching the importance of having Indigenous people in various news organisations. It was just really obvious. But it was, I got the chance to go to Imaginative in Toronto and spend some time there with Jason Ryle, as well as spending some time in the US during that year, and just to understand how different spaces work. And it's just really poignant conversation with the Black Lives Matter movement this year as well. And just, you can't have fear of other people. And I'm a very positive person by nature. So, I lean towards, the positive kind of stories, but we can't turn our minds away from, the difficulties a lot of our mob experience. And so, I suppose we've got to continue telling all of these stories in all their different ways and in all the different platforms so that we can really try and break some of that stereotypes that are really preventing our mob from being the best that they can be, mostly because there's all these forces around us that are kind of keeping us in. We want to be able to push them out.
Yeah, that's so true. It's it's quite a career you've had, Mayrah. Unbelievable. It's really fantastic. It's been so interesting to hear too. We've got a last question, very last question today. Oh, I love thinking about little people. What are you excited for in the future for your daughter?
Oh my goodness, it's just such a hard question when you're kind of grappling with how to take care of a little human. But I look forward. We've been in a bit of COVID lockdown like everyone else. So imminently I want her to meet the community and that she's a part of. We haven't had a chance to be doing that. We haven't even been to Sydney in the last 6 months. So, we can't. I want to make sure she knows, where she's from and the community that I grew up in Redfern. So taking her there and getting to know all the organisations and the people and having all the aunties, she's owed so many kisses already and cuddles. So first and foremost, it's that really connecting with community, which is going to look very different, parenting someone around COVID times and keeping everyone safe in terms of health. But I hope that the work that I've done, but also, the work that all my colleagues have done are just going to help make life a little bit easier for her. And just surrounding her with all these amazing women that I've come across, just the best group of aunties, really. It makes me excited for her future.
It's all about the women. It's brilliant. Absolutely.
No,
brilliant.
Sorry, boys. I love boys, but it's all about
they're fantastic. Yes, absolutely. They're a great support.
If you want something, get an Aboriginal woman, she'll get it done for you.
That's exactly right. And we're inspired by all the women who came before us, and your mother lives on in you and in your little girl. So it's going to be a bright future, I'm sure, for her, without a doubt, with all of you there behind her. It's been such a joy talking to you, Mayrah, and you're so wonderful, and I'm so proud and so glad that you won this Alumni Award and that we get to have these conversations and we get to showcase the brilliant work that Aboriginal, especially Aboriginal women, are doing out there, tirelessly working for our communities and setting up amazing examples for us to latch onto and to lead with and to bring our young ones in and show how fabulous, how deadly we are. Like, it's absolutely brilliant, Mayrah. Thank you so much for being here today. We truly appreciate it.
Oh, thank you very much. It feels indulgent, but I really appreciate Giovanna for nominating and everyone for being so kind. It's been certainly an odd year and personally a very challenging year, and it was just a lovely surprise to receive this, and I hope that we can continue to do more of this work, and thank you for the platform to share some of these stories. And thank you.
You're an award-winning
hosting today.
Thank you. It's absolutely my pleasure. It's always my pleasure to be in your orbit. It's been fabulous. So thank you so much. And thank you to UTS and to FAS and to the Centre for the Advancement of Indigenous Knowledges. And we hope everyone stays well and go safely. Ni yingi bilima nandirita. May you always see the beauty of this earth. Tijari Guru. Thank you so much. Thanks, Mayrah. Give that beautiful little girl a big hug and a kiss. Squeeze her. From the aunties here at CAIK. We're